So, like Bridget said, my name is Heidi. I am here to talk to you all. I brought a brand new talk. I was literally finishing it up. I don't usually say that because it seems really disrespectful, but I think that it's exciting that I get to give this talk to my hometown audience and see what you all think, because it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. But first we have to set the stage. Before we get into this, I'm going to say some things that you will think are not possible. And what I want you to know is that my revolution is not here yet. It is not for everyone, it is not yet, and it's not everyone doing this. So when I say these things, you have to keep in mind that there is a continuum of software. I hesitate to call it maturity because that seems really judgy, but there's a spectrum of software places that we're at, and not all of us are at the same place. So let's talk about the post-Agile world. Who here is doing some kind of Agile delivery or Agile development? Yeah, most people. You have sprint planning meetings, somebody made you do a training that involved passing balls to each other and dropping them and iterating on it, like that sort of thing. I think that we have been doing that for roughly 20 years. Like when I started in the industry, we called it extreme programming, and it involved literal 3x5 note cards to write a story on. If you couldn't fit it on a 3x5 note card, it wasn't a story. Software has 4 elements, 4 pillars. There's development style. This is how you define done. So for Agile, we define it as completing a story. For Waterfall, we define it as releasing something to a customer. When you think about development style, that's what I want you to think about. It's like, how do you know it's done? There's source control. How do you keep track of what you're doing as a team and as an organization? There's testing. How do you know that what you're putting out has any kind of merit or value and isn't going to cause anything to crash into anything else? And there's deployment. How do you get business value to your users? Those are the 4 things that I think compose most software. When I was talking about this, Jennifer Davis said that there's a 5th one, which she called the beingness of software, which sounds very metaphysical, but it's actually just like there's a state of software existing after it's deployed, when it's just being, when it's just performing what it's doing. This is a series of talks that I've given. I'm going to summarize them really quickly because I did talks on basically all 4 of these things. For Tinker Toys and microservices, full testing is impossible. You can't do it. You aren't doing it. I don't care what your code coverage percentage is. You're not actually testing every route possible. Decoupling is the only thing that makes it possible for us to work with other people, and I don't just mean other companies, I mean other people in our organization, because monoliths make it very difficult to get anything done because you have to get buy-in from everyone. And what we actually need to be testing is behavior and endpoints. Is the software, in its black box way, doing the thing that we need it to do? The second story is every scar is story. All of us have scars that tell stories. And what we need to be thinking about is how our source control is possibly a scar, is a reaction to circumstances that were real and may no longer be real. How are we thinking about source control in a way that is actually compatible with continuous integration and continuous delivery? And this is sort of where this talk is going. It's branches are a habit, but not a mandate. The third one, all the world's a staging server. Kill staging, test in production, launch darkly, go faster, be safer. If you haven't yet read Nicole Forsgren and Gene Kim's book, Accelerate, you should. It's mind-blowing. You really only need to read the first third. The second third is all of the math, which is valuable for some people. But I thought that the first third was, here is how we proved that releasing more often is safer. That tempo is actually what makes us safer, and the more reluctant we are to release, the more dangerous a release becomes, and therefore the more reluctant we become to release. That's a problem. We only get value when people get our software. If we don't release, we don't get any value. So, go read that book. And this was the keynote that I just gave at Velocity. Everything is a little bit broken. The world is composed of humans and machines which are fallible, and the sooner we accept that and build it into our plans, the better it is for us, because we're going to get a chance to recover from things to make them just a failure and not a disaster. A disaster is a team sport. A lot of people have to participate in order to make something really terrible. So, computing, rocks that think, in history. How's it been so far? Let's talk about development method, version control, and deployment. First, we had typing and ephemeral code, which had release of punch cards or printed material, right? Very old computers. Had physical backup. The way that we handled source control was putting it on cards, writing it down, maybe magnetic tape. All right, next up, we have Waterfall, which some of you may remember. Did I just?
Dropped it.
I just dropped it. Excellent. I'm like, what was that popping noise? I will keep going.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't mess right with my head. So next we had Waterfall, shared code, IDEs. If you don't remember this, it was actually kind of glorious. I mean, it was a pain in the ass to learn how to do anything, but you could do a lot of things. And our release method was a gold master. We would burn something to CD, and then we would copy the CDs and ship them out in a box. And then you install them, good luck. And we handled our source control with lockouts. This is a screen from, I think, Perforce. If you checked something out, nobody else could touch it. And if you got hit by a bus while it was checked out, everybody was sad. I mean, because you got hit by a bus, obviously. Also because they couldn't see whatever you'd been working on. So we had a lot of things that we came to assume about this. But then there was a revolution. Agile works really poorly with locking source control. You can make it work, it's not impossible, but it's not great, it's not super effective. And so we released with update packages, you get this notification that you should install this new disk or possibly download something. But now we have branching and Git. And when I say Git, I mean GitHub, GitLab, GitGone, like all sorts of things. Linus Torvald claimed that Git was his proof that he was not a one-hit wonder. Okay, boomer. But I love the caption on this was, I fucked up Git so bad that now it looks like I'm playing Guitar Hero. I'm like, yeah, it kind of does, good job. But it was a revolution because we could check things out without destructively checking them out. The original was still available for other people to check out. And then when we were done, we could check it back in and merge only the changes. I can't tell you what a big deal this was for people who had been working with locking source control. It was mind-blowing. It was so exciting. It's kind of old now. I mean, Git's been around for 20 years. I'd say probably it's been enterprise acceptable for, say, 10 years. That means that there are people who are legitimately senior developers who have never used anything but branching source control, ever. Okay, and that's all we're teaching in school right now. Nobody's like, hey, did you know this history of computing, we used to do source control in another way. They're like, okay, there were different languages. Let's talk about different languages. Let's talk about different development methodologies, different ways to say something's done. I haven't heard that anybody is teaching different source control methods. Because why would we? Because Git has eaten our lives. Because we believe in branching. I don't know that that's going to be true forever. And the thing that really made Git take off was GitHub, because it was actually useful and friendly and enterprise friendly. You could do the kind of control that you needed to make it an enterprise-friendly thing. You could say, oh, I see we fired you, you're locked out. Sad for you if you had anything private in that repository, you can't get to it anymore. As a person, that's a little dismaying. As a company, it's really important to be able to say, these people no longer have access. The fourth age of software, the one that we're in right now, the one that's starting, that's kicking off, that we haven't noticed we're in the middle of the revolution, is what I call blended software. Yours, mine, and ours. When you think about your software, you think about the stuff you write. But when you think about your architecture, you think about everything that everyone else wrote too. All of our software, thanks, yeah, be good. All of our software is blended. We're using APIs, we're using data streams, we're using tools, we're using other people's everything to make our software. If you look at what you ship to your customers, what percentage is actually something that your company wrote, and what percentage is an include, a library, a reference, something? Like, what do you think? 5%. 5% is what you wrote, okay. Anybody else?
25?
25. I'm getting answers around 30%. 30% of the code that we ship to customers is what we wrote. And the other 70% is something that somebody else did, which is why dependency management is going to become an even bigger deal than it is now. Our release method for this is progressive and incremental. I'm going to unplug this for a minute and see if it feels better. Have you unplugged it and plugged it in again? No, it doesn't feel better. Works on my computer. There it goes, yes. We'll see if it keeps flickering. So it's not like you have release day. It's not like you have Windows 95 is coming out today. It's not like Patch Tuesday. It's like 11:42 p.m. and something went out. And something went out at 11:48. And something went out at noon 02. And it doesn't release, it's so much as like oozes into the wild. That's how our software is. It's just perpetually updating and renewing, which seems great, but we can't continue to do what we're doing in terms of source control. This is the lagging indicator, the lagging part of those 4 pillars. We've got continuous integration and continuous delivery. We've got progressive deployment. We've got all sorts of cool automated testing that allows us to feel comfortable with pushing things out and testing in production. We have ways to manage all of that, and we're still using this old style branching, which is not going to work because it only controls that 30% that you're writing. It doesn't control that 70% that somebody else is writing. So it's all really complicated. It's all really hard to say, like, this is mine, this is yours, this is our API, this is an SDK, this is an integration. If the SDK breaks, who's responsible for fixing it? Who's responsible for making sure that it's secure? We don't know. We don't have good answers for that. But we do know that eventually our branches are going to stop being accessible to us. Our branches are going to become the thing that makes us slower, because the whole idea of merging means that you have a merge conflict. Almost nobody gets through a day without some kind of like, well, you tried to merge and somebody else tried to merge and now we have to have a fight to assert our dominance about who should be right about this software. Yeah, that's going to be a real problem if we want to actually release continuously. So source control must change. Somewhere in someone's basement, in some incubator, somewhere there is a company that's starting to do this. I thought Dark is a really interesting start. They have an integrated IDE, testing, release, everything. You should go look at them, they're really cool. I don't think they're it. They're a little too early, but we'll see. I think GitHub could pivot into this and start doing branchless, trunk-based source control. But something is going to happen because if we want to do CI/CD, we have to be able to stop hacking our branch-based source control to make it work. So it's going to need to be remixable. People have to be able to create a software package, delivery, stream. I don't even know what to call it. It doesn't have a name yet. But you have to be able to say, hey, I'm from Minnesota, and I would like to, I don't care about your palmetto bugs problem. I only want the mosquito modifications, and I don't want to consume anything that's not relevant to me. So it's going to have to be remixable both on the delivery side and the recipient side. We're going to have to talk about streams and not packages. When I was talking about this in Texas, somebody actually said, so could you solve this with blockchain? No, you can't solve this with blockchain because blockchain assumes that you have a single identifiable piece of software. It says, I have frozen this moment in time, this is the software that I've deployed. That's not how we're working. If you look at it, that's not how we're working. What we're actually doing is saying, this is a stream that I am consuming. This is the data. This is the API that I'm pulling in and transforming and using in order to do this other thing. So, for example, it's not like our credit scores are frozen in time and they only get cut once a month and they just get distributed to everybody we might ever want to buy a car from. No. In the moment, the car dealer says, hey, should I give this person a car loan? And a set of variables plays together to generate what we call our credit score. And that's how we get it. It's not a frozen moment. It is a set of streams. And so when we're thinking about the next source control, it has to be stream aware. And Git is not stream aware. Git is only ever package aware. It's going to be a problem. And it has to be real time. And you can see why it needs to be real time. If it's doing streams, it needs to be real time. And that means it needs to be aware of the health of the stream and what's coming in and what it's connecting to and what its upstream is. It's pretty complicated. It's going to be a problem. And it has to be trust moderated. So there is a difference in consuming a package from SPS Commerce and from some random person in Bulgaria who may or may not stop coding this open source thing in 3 months when they get a real job, right? These are different risk levels. And what we're going to have to be able to do is say, these people have a very high SLA, and I actually trust them to follow through on it. I trust them to have 4 nines, and I'm going to go ahead and consume them without any kind of gating. But these people, I've never heard of, no one's ever heard of. They're doing a thing I need, but I don't 100% trust them to keep doing a thing I need. So we're gonna check that out a little more. And I think for this to work, I think we're going to need a third-party rating system, an external SLA verification. And that is going to make somebody a ton of money. Because what you're going to have to do is almost like a level of security compliance, but also like uptime compliance. We're going to have this whole industry built up of people who will give you a better rating if you go through their packages. We're going to have to say, like, if you're not this tall, you don't get to ride in our source control. Like, it'll be interesting change of the ecology. But I don't think this testification aware system will work without a third party doing it. I don't think even Microsoft can like rock up and say, hey, yeah, no, we never go down. Because sometimes they do. But if they can rock up and say, hey, like we only go down this percentage, and if we do, we can send out this kind of message, and we've gone through the training to make sure that it's more reliable. Oh, yeah, maybe, we'll see. It needs to be usable by both humans and corporations. Remember how I said that GitHub was the thing that made Git adoption possible for corporations? Whatever the next source control is, it's going to start as an open project, but I don't know that it can stay open unless it gets something like the Cloud Foundation or something like that, Cloud Native Foundation. It's going to have to be sponsored because you have to have somebody to do the design and the tech writing and all of the things that nobody finds exciting about doing software, but does make it useful and usable for corporations and for humans. So that's where I think the future of source control is going to go. It's going to manage streams and packages. It's going to be trunk-based. That means you're not going to have branches that are different. It's all going to be happening live. And the way you do that, and here's where like my vendor moment, is you have to have something that does feature flags. Because it is not continuous integration and continuous delivery if you can't deploy broken code to production. Broken code has to be able to make it all the way to production and never show to any users you don't want to see it. I want your production to be a nightmare and nobody on the outside to know. Because that's the only way trunk-based development is going to work. If you can have all of these different states happening at the same time and turn off things that are broken and turn on things that are experiments, and then turn them off if they're a bad experiment, that's how it's going to work. It needs to build in best practices. We're going to have to say, of course I'm enforcing linting and testing and like integration testing. Like, why wouldn't I do that? If you don't build that in, people will bypass it. Because we would all like to be doing something other than testing. And so the tool has to enforce that. It needs to work for infrastructure. As the DevOps community, you're more aware of this than many of the audiences I talk to, but infrastructure as code is real and important and getting bigger all the time. It is not going to be an okay source control if it can't handle infra. If it can't think about switches as the same as software. So, whatever it is, it's going to have to do that. And like I said, it's going to need to be open. People are going to need to be able to contribute to it and see it, because I wouldn't trust something to run my entire production system and keep all of my code if I couldn't see where it keeps its thoughts. It's sort of like the journal in Harry Potter. I want to know where it is and what it's thinking. So it needs to be open. And it needs to have a strong community. Because one organization, one company, even one really active user group is not going to be enough to figure out all the things that the next generation of source control is going to need. So what does that mean for you? So you're all sitting here going, this lady is crazy, and I came out here in the cold, and she has just told me all these things that I do not believe are going to happen. Nothing is going to happen yet. This company does not exist. I'm only defining the problem space, but I think the problem space is coming for us faster than you think. I think in 5 years, you will look up and somebody will be like, oh, yeah, no, we're like, I know you're interviewing here, we're a new company, we don't use branch-based source control, we're all trunk-based. There are a lot of companies out there that are already doing this. You just don't hear about it a lot because it's not the exciting thing to talk about. But Google is entirely trunk-based. They don't create a branch when they go to make something new. They create a flag and do everything behind it. Facebook, too. I'm not saying that these are the exemplars of how we should always be writing software, because none of us are Google or Facebook, thank God. But I'm saying that at enormous scale, it makes sense to be trunk-based. So we're going to get there. But as you're thinking about this, think about your next architecture planning. What would this look like if you were making a trunk instead of branches? What project dependencies do you have, and how do you keep track of that? And how far down do you keep track of that? Like, who here had a left pad NPM problem? Nobody? Nobody? No people. Okay. Yeah. A few, 3 years ago now? Yeah, 3 years ago, an independent developer in Europe got in a tiff with NPM about a namespace collision, and had what I could only qualify as a hissy, and pulled his code out. What nobody realized until it happened was it was part of a dependency package that was part of a dependency package that was hugely popular, because you didn't need to rewrite all of this really basic stuff that included putting a space to the left of the first character. And when that got pulled out, all of the packages upstream broke. Wow. I mean, broke. It was a bad day on the internet for Node people, for JavaScript people. So you need to identify your project dependencies and figure out what you're going to do if any of them vanish suddenly. And you're going to start thinking, as part of this project, this dependency thing, about how reliable you find this provider and how you want to control what is coming from it. Do you want to put a switch on that so you can turn it on and off? Do you want to write an explicit SLA? Do you want to have copies locally of whatever it is that you're depending on, just in case something goes south and you can switch over to it? As you think about dependencies, you're going to start thinking and realizing how much you rely on the goodwill and good luck of what has gone before. Everything is a little bit broken, and realizing that makes it more important and valuable to look at what everything is, so we can tell. So I'd like to say thank you to a bunch of these people. There are a lot of other people who have been bending their ear about this for several months now. I'm going to write this up as a big long essay in my infinite free time. But thank you all for your attention, and I'd love to hear what you think about it.